Se. Se. Sis.
to start at 9, right? Yes, I sent you the link, but I'm just going to say that we are waiting for some of the speakers. There is a confusion with the room number, so we need to give them at least 5 more minutes to be here. Hello, everybody. Just one small logistic announcement. We're going to start probably five minutes late. It seems there is a confusion with the room number for some people, and we are missing some speakers. So just give us a few minutes while they get here and get this sorted, okay?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for being here this morning. Sorry about the little mix-up concerning the rooms, but we're delighted that you all managed to make it. My name is Duncan McIntosh. I'm the Development Director at APNIC. I'll be moderating for the first half of this morning. Of course, you know my colleague Sylvia from APNIC as well. Just to make sure we're all in the right place, this is the workshop on From Ideas to Solutions, Funding Challenges for Internet Development. And this morning what we hope to do is have a series of brief presentations from our panel here, who we'll introduce in a moment, and then really try to engage in a productive discussion around the opportunities for support and resources in the area of the use of the internet for social development. We're particularly pleased that in the audience and joining us this morning are representatives from the Seed Alliance, the different programs, FIRE, ICEF, who'll be participating and looking forward to learning from the discussion. So with that as a brief introduction, I think I'd like to turn now to our panel that's gathered with us. We're delighted to have them here. And I think I'm going to let them introduce themselves and invite them to just take a minute to introduce themselves, their organization, and what they'd like to say this morning. So I'll start with Jens on my left.
Okay, my name is Jens Karberg. I'm coming from Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, also called SIDA. I just want to present a bit of how our support is look like, and the challenges I think for some of partners to access the money and so on. Should I present something now, or should
let's go through and come back.
Perfect.
Thank you.
My name is Laurent Elder. I work for the International Development Research Centre, which is a Canadian Crown corporation that focuses on research for development. The big program that I lead is called Information and Networks. And that program actually funds the Seed Alliance, as well as SIDA and a few other partners. I'm mostly going to talk about two things. One of them is the whole challenge around thinking about public funds for an area like innovation that Seed Alliance is involved with, and the challenges around thinking about what those public funds should be used for. And the second thing is around, that I'll talk about, is a little bit about failure and tolerance to failure in this space.
Thanks, Lauren.
I'm Jennifer Haroon, and I'm from Google. And I'm mostly going to talk about some of the private sector investments that Google has made in internet development worldwide, but also in some of the challenges in some of the funding and partnerships that we do in this space as well.
Thank you, Jennifer. Adiel?
Yeah, I'm Adiel Aplogan. I'm the CEO of Afrinic. I will be talking globally about Seed Alliance and FIRE, which is the Fund for Internet Research and Development that is part of the Seed Alliance, and some of the challenges that we face specifically from developing country in participating in this kind of fund. The FIRE is supported by IDRC and the student fund, SIDA, and also the need for capacity building in applying for this kind of funding globally. Thanks.
Thank you, Adiel. And last but not least, Ihab.
Hi, I am Ihab Osman. I run a technology advisory firm called Africa TMT, and I'm here to talk about bringing startup and entrepreneurship fundraising techniques into the social entrepreneurship and internet development and just a traditional business startup fundraising techniques.
Thank you very much. I'm sure you can see it's a very good panel, and I think for the next few minutes we're going to have some very interesting presentations. I'm pleased to see a few more people joining us. Welcome. Please come down. There's some seats at the front for those who've... So we have one more panelist, Ernesto. Please come down and join us. Hi, please. Ernesto, could I ask you to introduce yourself?
Okay,
Just a brief introduction.
yes, I'm Ernesto Majo. I'm interim CEO of LACNIC and a former manager of Frida.
Thank you very much. For the external, one more time.
Okay, I am Ernesto Majo. I'm interim CEO of LACNIC and also former manager of Frida.
Thank you very much. Okay, so let's get started. To the panelists, I'd like to just, there's one simple guideline, and that's to try to limit your presentation, your comments to 5 minutes apiece before we get into the discussion. So Jens, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. As I said, I'm coming from SIDA, which is a governmental organization. So our funds are coming from the Swedish citizens. It's tax money. And Sweden spent around $5 billion a year on development cooperation. And half of that money is going through SIDA as an agency. I think when I speak to partners, they see it's quite hard to access organizations like SIDA, and for different reasons, both in terms of access points, in terms of bureaucracy, and in terms of the criteria we put up for different organizations. When it comes to access points, for example, we SIDA as an organization are working both globally, regionally, and to bilateral with country access, and all the different regions, it's different access points. For example, if you're coming as a local organization in a country, you need to go through the embassy. And if you're working with regional projects, you have to go through the regional context. And for me, working with global money, it's another point. So it's both regional dispersed, but also the different areas. And all these access points are different people, and one of the problems I also see is that we are not fully coordinated within the organization. So if someone accesses me, it's a big risk that I don't know the people you should speak to. When it comes to bureaucracy, it's also quite big problems. We have quite hard criteria for the organization that are accessing our money for different reasons. One is that our funds are quite big. Our smallest funds is around $1 million US a year for the grants. and going upwards up to 30, 40 millions grants. And to give out this kind of money, we have quite a large procedures for doing that. And for smaller organizations, it's quite hard to be able to cooperate with these procedures. So, as it is today, we're supporting around 350 different programs within which has a component including ICT. So 350 out of around 5,000 supports that we do have today. Most of these supports is in the area of democracy and human rights. Another group would be in private sector collaboration and entrepreneurship. And another area, not an area really, but a group is an integration in some where the major impact is in another area, for example, that it could be in health or other areas where ICT is a component for integration. I think I stopped there for.
Thanks, Jens. You're very kind with the time.
Yeah.
Thank you. But that's a good introduction for the topic. And just to remind the audience, what we're speaking to this morning is the complexities of funding innovation in the public interest. So, Laurent, if I could invite you to make your remarks, please.
I may keep this even shorter, actually. Well, one of the big questions I have, or that we have, is what is the public interest? I don't think there's an answer. If any of you have an answer, I'd love to hear it, because there's a lot of debate as to what that public interest is. And that becomes an even bigger question for us when we're publicly funded. We are Canadian taxpayer funded. So what does that mean? I was actually going to open it up a little bit, but I guess you want to keep it till the end, or?
No, I think we're interested, so please.
Okay. So does anybody have a notion of what this public interest notion means? Can somebody come up with like a one-word thought around that? I challenge you. Anybody? Yeah?
I suspect from Malaysia, please.
Well, just a concept. Like, why are we talking about the public interest?
Could you use the microphone, please?
It's a few concepts in terms of public interest. I don't know, for me, coming from Malaysia, it's something related to something like democracy. It's like what everybody wants, including the protection and needs of the minorities in a public space. That's as close as I can think of. Yeah.
Right. And that's a pretty good encapsulation. Normally, it's anything that goes beyond, it's often contrasted to private interest. So it's something that goes beyond the private, beyond the market, to the public. So quite often public funds are seen as being used for public goods. But again, what does public good mean? What does it mean to fund a public good, especially in the innovation space? One of the notions could be that it has to do with a public interest area, health, education, environment, those kinds of areas that are generally, the consensus is that those are public good, public interest areas. So then it becomes, for a funder, easier to think about activities there. But when you're dealing with entrepreneurship, or innovation or technology development, that question becomes a lot more complicated. Where is that boundary between the public interest and the private interest? It's not clear. Every time it's a case-by-case basis quite often. Another kind of rule of thumb is that you can get involved in, or public funds can be used whenever there's market failure. So whenever there's an issue that you know the market can't take up, you could use public funds to help subsidize and catalyze technological activities. We have a few Seed Alliance awardees who deal with issues of the blind and other basic challenge issues where there usually isn't a market response to these things. There isn't a market incentive to create applications around there. So public subsidies can be used for that kind of purpose. The second area on technology innovation where public funds can be used is when a technology can potentially lead, or technology funding can potentially lead to positive economic externalities. So that's a lot of complex talk just to say that at the end of the day, you expect that by funding a technology, you will have spillover effects, or you will be able to create other broader technological innovation, employment, and income generation through that funding of a technology. Sometimes you do it purposefully, as in the case of railways in the 19th century, and sometimes you do it without knowing it. The internet is probably the best example of a publicly subsidized technology that was created for defense purposes, and lo and behold, it turned out that there were great kind of economic benefits to it, spillover effects. So when the public gets it right, when the government gets it right, it can have really good spillover effects, but it's very difficult to pick winners. So that brings me to the second point around tolerance to failure. Because we're publicly funded, because we're taxpayer funded, the tolerance to failure is minimal. We are not expected to fail. We are not expected to have a situation where you fund something and it doesn't do anything useful. And it's actually become increasingly difficult to fail. Yet in the innovation space, you have to fail. It's through failing that you learn. It's through failing that you actually advance and progress. Most studies that evaluate innovation tell you that if you're lucky, 10% of your kind of product innovation will actually go to market, right? That's a very low success rate for a government-funded organization. So how do you deal with that? How do you factor that into your decision-making process? It is very, very complex. I know that in the space that we were very involved with in the past, ICT4D, there's a big movement towards talking about failure, talking about fail fairs and things like that. And that's great. That space needs it. But again, I can tell you, working for a taxpayer-subsidized organization, it is very difficult to talk about that more openly. So these are the kinds of tensions that we have to deal with when thinking about how we fund and what we fund in this space. And I'd be happy to take any questions after that. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Laurent. Okay, if I may invite our next speaker, Jennifer, for her remarks, please.
Thanks, Duncan. I think both Laurent and Jens mentioned that they come from taxpayer-funded organizations, which leads to their own constraints. At Google, obviously, we aren't directly a taxpayer-funded organization, but we also have our own constituents, such as shareholders, employees. And so when we think about internet development, and some of the issues that Laurent in particular talked about, including failure, we come from a slightly different point of view. And we think about internet development as both a business for Google, which I think is obvious, being an internet company, but also a mission-driven activity, since we really believe in the power of the internet to bring information to people. And so we fund internally a number of different projects on the innovation and technology side that we feel may be able to bring internet to more people. Examples of that include Project Loon, which uses high-altitude balloons to try to bring internet to people. We also have invested in a drone company. But that also means, of course, that we have more tolerance for failure. Those are technologies that haven't been proven yet, that we're trying to work on. We also invest in what I would call business model innovation as another attempt to bring internet access to more people. And one example of that is Project Link, where we've built and operate a wholesale metro fiber network in Kampala, Uganda. And there, the innovation, again, was more on the business model side, where we built a fiber network that's open to all licensed mobile operators and ISPs in that market, in the hopes that we could lower the cost structure for the industry as a whole, so that each individual mobile operator and ISP doesn't have to invest in building fiber infrastructure themselves. And what we've seen is that has enabled some of the smaller ISPs and new entrants enter that market and has added some competition to the market. But again, it's still fairly early days. We only announced that project last November. So again, we'll have to see how successful it is. On the other side, we also don't believe that there is any one silver bullet that's going to solve the internet development issue, which is why we invest in a number of technologies and business models internally, but we also work with governments, NGOs, and others in the industry to try to advance a number of these issues. So we've also funded organizations, particularly on capacity building, which Adil has mentioned, and then also work on policy and regulatory issues, along with partners such as with the Alliance for Affordable Internet, as policy issues tend to be one of the biggest areas that we then can see as a roadblock to some of these innovations. So maybe I'm going to pause there as well.
Thanks very much, Jennifer. Adiel, could we ask for your comments and remarks, please?
Yes, thank you. I will have probably the opportunity to talk more about fire, but I want to kind of come back to a few of the points that were raised by the previous speaker, and the question that Laurent has held raised around public interest investment and all. And I just want to say that generally from developing country and then specifically Africa, I think everything is about public interest, right? Because that's the way we see it. Why? Because in most of the developing country, the structure for alternative funding for innovation doesn't just exist. Anything that you want to do, you want to take a risk in terms of innovation that will probably help people advance their own business or address a very social issue. There is no other avenue, even from local government, to invest in those things. So everything is for development, and development is good for everybody. So the way we see it is this kind of funding is to support anything that can help people develop, so it's good for everyone, or start new business from a new initiative, a new idea. Because capital does not exist in many African countries either, because you help them and then they can run on that to move. And thirdly, areas such as health, such as agriculture and others, which are fundamentally labeled as development area, rural area investments come on top of that. But generally, when you see things from developing country perspective, people are struggling at all the level of the scale to get funding, and they are not struggling because they want to take the easier way. They are struggling just because there is no other alternative for them. So when you look at that from that perspective, you find yourself in the need of helping them to at least kickstart their idea, even if at the end it will be run like a normal business and get some other funding to do that. That's why I think the more we can work to have a private-public funding partnership in developing country, more it will be easy, so that people can benefit from both sides to kind of leapfrog the environment, the base environment before we have a very structural environment like other area. So specifically for FIRE, which is a fund that we have launched 2 years ago at Afrinic, Fund for Internet Research and Education, we mainly wanted to focus the fund on what we call operational research. It's not just university research for, just, I would say, intellectual research, but it's a research that can then be translated into a concrete product that can enhance people's social environment and education as well. And for us, education goes from use of internet as a catalyst for socio-economical development to how do you innovate and use your innovation to advance your social welfare. That means transform your idea into business and make money out of it. How do you present a proposal to get funding? How do you implement best practices in running your business? That's why, for instance, we right now are also investing a lot on intellectual property where needed, so that people understand that when you innovate, you just don't throw it out there and somebody else will pick it and add a pattern on it, and then you have nothing. So at least they have the idea. We have also another challenge in our region, because in Africa we have Francophone and Anglophone speaking country, and generally, we have more, I would say, interest from English-speaking country, because our operation mode is more in English. And we have also started trying to encourage more application from French-speaking country, because again, in the process, in all the application process, the culture are different from an English-speaking country and the French-speaking country. So we have invested a lot of effort in building capacity in French-speaking country, for instance, to help them understand how the process works, what are the different procedures that we use. The first year of FIRE, we haven't received any application from French-speaking country, for instance, but for the second one, we have received few, and few even has are benefiting now from our grant. We have been fortunate to have CEDA Alliance and IDRC as a supportive organization to launch this fund. We have a few other donors locally as well to support this. But our real ambition is to be able to kind of help people who don't have real hand-holding mechanism to help them access the fund. And those guys generally in many countries, the bureaucracy, the whole process, the complexity of public funding process just discourage them. They don't want to, they don't have even the resources to spend on that, so they just give up. So what we're trying to do is to help them throughout the process so that they understand how to do that, give them some tool which help them to produce acceptable proposal, and then second phase will be to help them grow their business, because that is what will make them independent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adil. Ihab, please.
Thanks. I'm going to focus my comments mostly on Africa, It's a region I have a lot of interest in, and I think probably the region of the world that has the most challenges when it comes to raising funds. Africa is the youngest continent on Earth. When I say youngest, of course, population, where 60% of the population is under 20 years of age, and with very high population growth. If we look at Africa of today, it's not the same of Africa of 25, 30 years ago, where the story was always about donor funding and aid, while we can see now slowly the continent is shifting into more traditional economical model, if you will, of investments and development, commercial-based development. However, there is no real heritage of modern entrepreneurship, if you will, in Africa, because simply there is no a Silicon Valley in Africa. There is no role models of entrepreneurs who started small companies and who've managed to grow it into significant business. So we're not just lacking funds, but we're also lacking that role models, those skills to help, whether it's social entrepreneurs who are looking to create businesses or programs and services for the help to help the public good, or to create more of a social value rather than private value. So if we take Africa from my point of view, and I will add into what Adel has said about this public-private partnership, I think the business incubators model is probably something that is greatly needed all over Africa, because it's not just about funding, but it's really about hand-holding, and it's about opening up the path for a new generation of entrepreneurs, almost trailblazers, because there is really nobody in front of them who's done it before. Whether this, as I said, for the social overall social good, or for private interest. I cannot stress how critical it is, this hand-holding or this incubation. And there are a lot of large corporations, especially in the technology space, Google, Microsoft, a number of Oracle, IBM, a number of large technology companies has recognized that and are opening up different centers in different parts of Africa to help young entrepreneurs get these skills on top of the funds. So I will say young entrepreneurs and young social entrepreneurs in Africa in the beginning need more traditional business skills, putting together business plans, putting together presentations, understanding the financials, all the basic skills that are required to run a successful enterprise, whether it's a private enterprise or a social enterprise. The funds come almost second, because if you don't have the skills, you will squander whatever funds that are there. So let's start with kind of the skills and add funds into it, put the combination together. I think it will help a great deal. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Now let's move from Africa to Latin America. And Ernesto, please.
Thank you. I will try to give another perspective, a perspective from an organization who has been working trying to assign the funds for the best projects in our region. And when we started doing that job, and it was in 2004, we follow the traditional way. No? We made calls for projects, and we identify some experts in the region, like IDA, sorry, and we try to have the best team of evaluators in our region to select the best ideas, the more innovative ideas, the good ones. And it was the beginning, and after that, we during these 10 years, we made a lot of improvements. For example, we created the awards. That was an idea to identify successful projects, not only ideas to develop, but also ideas, succeeded ideas. And, but the way that we used was very similar. We made open calls for stories, for successful stories. We try to develop clear information for the proponents. We try to develop a clear form for receiving the ideas. And also, we had the committee, the evaluation committee, who has the most important work in that process, was the select the ideas, the projects. And of course, after that, well, we are trying to give some promotion, to give some visibility for the successful projects in order to recognize their stories, their ideas, but also to encourage other people to try to follow their own. As I said, we make some improvements. We create the Award Plus. Was an idea to give the opportunity to the awardees to receive some funds for improving their ideas, to develop, to deploy. And also we created a startup process that was all projects funded by FRIDA, but we give the opportunity to that projects to facilitate the deployment of the idea in other countries, in other regions, especially targeting some countries with more difficulties, like some countries of Central America, Haiti, and Bolivia and Paraguay. But in the whole process, when we try to learn from the experience, we always put the focus on have a very good evaluation of the proposals, to develop clear information, to have very good forms, to facilitate the expression of the ideas, and also the dissemination. This year we add some other improvements like the online training. I think it was a very successful experience, and I think that we will in the future we will be maintaining and increase. But as a result of these 10 years of work, we had more or less 100 projects selected. Some was funded projects by FRIDA, other was awards. But we had many thousands of proposals that failed. So I think that the focus of my speech is in the proposals that failed. So I think that we, as a facilitator, as an organization which is in the middle of the donors, funds, and the beneficiaries, we need to try to improve our capacity to bring to to improve the experiences of the whole participant of the programs. And I think that we need to think in what should we do with the failed proposals, with the people who fail trying to receive funds, but who they made a very important effort trying to explain how is their ideas and their projects. So I think that I have some questions. I think that they should know why their proposals were not selected, and if were the project ideas wrong expressed, or the reason was because the technologies or the application of the technologies were enough known, or if they don't provide enough information. Just three possibilities. And another question I think that we need to discuss is what should we do to help proponents to work with their ideas and learn from the process, learn from the experiences of doing failure. And other is what kind of information should we provide to them in order to improve their proposals. And what kind of mechanisms or tools we should develop, the members of the Sea Alliance, Frida in particular, what kind of mechanisms or tools we need to develop in order to help the community of innovators and researchers to learn from the process, even though they don't receive money from us.
Thank you very much, Ernesto. I think you can see from that array of brief presentations, we have a great depth of knowledge and experience on the panel this morning. We're a little bit tight on time, but I think if anybody has a particularly burning question for the panel, we can take some questions. I see one. Yes, gentleman from Bangladesh, please.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Bhaskar Bhattacharjee. I am from Bangladesh, Young Power in Social Action, IPSA. Especially, I have been working since long in ICT for development field to ensure accessible information for people with disabilities, and also ensure the access in the information communication technology. Remember, as a blind persons, you cannot give power or light in my eye, but the computer can change my life. You are seeing I'm here because of my computer. So we can change the people's lives by using information communication technology for the visually impaired community. Same time, that contribution goes to the low literate people or illiterate people who are same to me. They cannot read by seeing in the printed materials. So we found that the biggest challenge is the funding. Funding agencies sometimes ignore the issues because of their, maybe it is critical to understand how this technology can help the people with disabilities and how can change the people's lives. Sometimes there's one logic come that this is the small or minority groups, so why you will invest the money for these groups? So this is another question, and always we found that the ICT for development activities ignore the accessibility needs of people with disabilities. In that case, we are also see like the founder, they are not sometimes very much careful about the accessibility need of people with disabilities. So we want a inclusive funding design, like whenever you're funding someone, some projects, you must include the accessibility needs, or you ask the questions, do all the people will include in this? It will be inclusive, or it will exclude someone, which is the legal mandate, because there is a convention, UN Convention of Rights of Persons with Disabilities, where there is Article 9, it says about the accessibility needs, and also the Article 21, which also about the access to informations, right to informations, and many other articles also ensure the rights of persons with disabilities. So I think there is a legal mandate also. Hopefully the funder will consider this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jens, Laurent, would you like to any quick response to those comments concerning support for ICTs, particularly in that area of disabilities?
Just to say that it's a great idea. You know, for me, as I mentioned when I was speaking, you know, the area of disabilities is a perfect example of an area in the public interest. I mean, that is where public subsidies should be used. Unfortunately, it did make me think of another kind of key challenge, and that's the challenge of the narrative in our space, in the space of internet and ICTs and development. Because we know that the outside world doesn't always see the internet or computers as being a necessary good or something that has a direct relationship to development needs and, for example, the needs of people with disabilities. So if we get better at telling that story, at documenting that story, that link becomes easier to make, and then you know, you have a better chance of getting funding for those kinds of issues.
Thanks very much. I think I need to just watch the time because we are supposed to finish at 10:30. Let me just check with my boss, Sylvia, and ask, considering that we now move to the sessions on the roundtables, and to provide enough time for the roundtables discussions.
The idea is to, sorry for the transcripts. For the benefit of the transcript. The idea is that we now break into 3 groups to discuss the regional challenges that Africa, Latin America, and the Asia-Pacific regions might face. And then the speakers will also be distributed evenly, hopefully, in the 3 groups. And the idea is to get the voice of the people in the audience to participate in this conversation. We are trying to build that framework, or at least contribute to the framework of a more inclusive and flexible funding mechanisms, and raise a lot of issues, not only for our donors like IDRC or SIDA, but for private companies and other mechanisms like the SIDA Alliance. So that's why we want to break for the small tables. But if you have more questions, I guess it would be good to do them now, so we can use the time for the roundtables in a minute.
All right, so let's please, let's take 2 more questions. Please, and introduce yourself.
Sure, thank you. My name is Andrew Mack. I work with AM Global Consulting in Washington, and I am part of the team that is launching .ngo. And so one of the key attributes of .ngo is that it's got a kind of crowdfunding, where for every NGO that becomes part of the community, there will be the ability to get donations right online. And it made me think about the innovation space in the sense that it is this crowdfunded source. If we could, rather than looking for a big fund, just mobilize small contributions, whether they be in the NGO sector or whether they be in the technology sector, it could prop up things like the iHub in Nairobi much, much more quickly than looking for, you know, the 35th, being the 35th application for the UNDP grant or for a Google grant. So I'm wondering whether people are thinking about how to get the crowdfunding, especially from north to south. Thank you.
Jennifer, maybe I could put you on the spot and ask you your thoughts on that.
I mean, certainly crowdfunding has seen quite a bit of success in the US for funding new ideas and innovative ideas. I honestly I'm not familiar with its use in funding internet development. And I do think it's a good idea. I would also say, though, that we've found that a lot of internet development is very expensive. I mean, when you think about core internet infrastructure like fiber optic networks, which of course aren't the only answer, but it can be quite expensive. And so I could see crowdfunding used for some of the smaller community-based networks, which we've seen around the world as having quite a bit of success. And there's a number of technology companies that have been developing less expensive technology for these community-based networks. So I definitely think it's an interesting idea.
Thanks very much. And Joshua, the last question for this session.
Hi, I'm Joshua Haynes from USAID, the U.S. Agency for International Development. And my question is about the risk of failure. How do you get around that? Of course, we deal with that a lot, and we are trying to innovate in our processes as well. And so just wanted to know how you do that so we can get some more information about what we should do.
Please, Laurent.
Well, on that one, we're actually really lucky because we are a research funding organization. So in a way, we can, and I'll be flippant here, but we can turn a failure into a lesson. But that's important. I mean, I'm being flippant, but at the same time, it is essential because the whole part of the whole process of innovation is one of learning, right? Trying to understand what works and what doesn't. So bringing in evaluation and research into the process is absolutely critical. And if I may go back to the comment from before around crowdfunding, I think that's a great idea, but it did kind of highlight, you mentioning iHub kind of highlighted another key challenge in this space. And that's the fact that once there's a success, everybody funds it. People are tripping over each other to fund it. iHub is an example of that right now, right? It is extremely successful. And every single donor and every single internet corporation is trying to have a relationship with iHub to fund it. And then that ends up potentially harming the next iHub, right? So it's, to a certain extent, there is a need to even the field, and I think sometimes crowdsourcing can play a role in that, but sometimes it could actually make things worse because it tends to be less involved in the field. It tends to be one step removed from what's actually happening in the field, and hence will fund the things that are well known and well promoted.
Leo, did you have a comment?
Yes, I would say two things. The first is about the risk and the failure in funding development project. I think it's about taking the risk to go into an area which has never been explored, which doesn't have any, background, and invest in initiative and learn lesson from it. I think development funding is a funding that should be based on ability to fail, not only in the area of research, but area of actually doing things, because that's how you build people knowledge, that's how you build as well people who are, courageous enough to take the risk themselves to come up with their new idea and put it on the table. That's the first thing. The second thing is when we talk about internet development, several times in meeting like this, we talk about internet development and in developing country. For me, internet development is not only about the infrastructure development, and we tend to always focus on access and infrastructure development. For me, internet is a whole, and more importantly, what people need to understand is that the internet is not just getting access to internet and consume application and content that are not really directly relevant to them, but it's how can they use the internet to innovate based on local needs, on local interest, helping people to produce local content. How do they help people in rural area to scale up their farm? Small things like that for me are what will make the internet more relevant, because as soon as those applications are visible, investment in infrastructure will come more easily from people who, as you say, when it works, people come and invest. But first, how can we build the usage ecosystem locally, that will then make infrastructure investment more useful. So we have to take the internet development investment approach differently, separating the infrastructure development investment from the user, the innovation of the service on the internet. That's what people really need.
Thank you. And the last word just for this question goes to Jens, please.
My response is both going towards the funding and also the risk part. I think one way of how we are trying to crowdfund is to do it with our money, to find partners that are willing to put money into the same areas we are doing. And usually that also has been with other donors, but also more and more with private sectors. And I wouldn't say it's a big part of what we're doing, but it's concerning us more and more in that sense. And another thing, I think this with the risk is one of the highest discussion areas for working in this area. And so far we don't really have a good solution for it. I think what it takes is strong leadership in an organization like ours, where we have leaders that says to do this work. And it's not just technology, it's development itself, working in areas you don't really know the solution, and the solution is not easily grasped. So I think it also boils down to a lot what you said, Lawrence, that to learn from failures. And if we as an organization, governmental organization, could show that learning, I think we also could have a case for doing more failures in the future.
Thank you very much. I think at this point I've been advised by my bosses that we will not be breaking up into groups. Noting the time, I think we agree that there's quite a good discussion ongoing. Everybody's welcome to make questions. So I'd like to thank the panel. Please don't move from where you are. Get ready for more questions. And I'd like to hand over to my fellow moderator, Gaël Fall from Afrinic, and just thank the panel and hand over. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Duncan. Yes, we have a very good momentum going on, and we don't want to break that momentum, because in order to go back into another one, it's going to take time. So for the sake of time, we're going to keep the discussions going. We welcome everyone to please chip in, give your experiences, what you've been going through, your challenges, what have been your successes. And there are also a few questions maybe to keep in mind, and I'll just read them through real quickly. And of course, the panel is definitely welcome to chip in as well, to contribute. So one of the first questions is, how do you define successful innovation, and how would you measure it? Also, how do you assess, and in other words, how do you give value to the intangible nature of innovation activities? What are the financing opportunities available in your region? And one last question is, what do you think are the main obstacles to financing the ICT sectors? So please, anyone, you are welcome to tackle any of these questions, or even just share your experience.
Okay, I'm a little bit different here because I'm in the area of rights. So here's like freedom of expression, human rights, and so on. And one of the problems that we face in countries where this is a problem is that there are a lot of restrictions to actually help prevent organizations in this space. So you can't get funding, for example, because you can't register yourself as a civil society organization. If you do get registration or support, you could have your funds frozen. Initially, getting help from other donors can also be problematic. So for Malaysia last year, we had a strong kind of public condemnation of foreign donors helping rights organizations. So one suggestion that I would have, but I'm not sure if this is a solution, but if other people have other better solutions from other regions, it would be good, is that you might need to actually have external organizations that are able to fund from outside and manage these and give it to the groups that are in need, because these groups in these countries may not be able to access these funds. And it's a good example is actually ISIF. When I actually asked for the grant, I really did not know, even if we were successful, where we would actually get the funds put into to access. So I actually had to shop around civil society organizations who themselves have troubles with getting funds from outside to be able to host us. So I just put it to the panel and everybody else in countries where this is a problem. What are the possible solutions other than the one that I've just suggested?
Thank you very much. That's, I think that's a very good point that you raise, knowing that a lot of these innovations and a lot of the funding challenges can also be subject to the geopolitical aspects of our world. So does anyone want to chip into this? Sylvia, yes?
Just one comment on what Kyril mentioned from the difficulties to get funding in the Asia Pacific. Just want to mention two issues. One, on the crowdfunding. There are a lot of countries in the Asia Pacific and some of countries in Africa are also blacklisted to be able to receive payments, for example, from PayPal. So even developers that want to stay in the Pacific Islands and work from the Pacific Islands cannot get paid for the work that they want to do, because there are mechanisms that do not allow those funds to be received into their bank accounts. That's one. And the second one is a lot of restrictions, as Kyril mentioned, from governments to be able to channel funds from overseas to support the small organizations. Just last year, we had an experience with an Indian organization that they have to process something called the FCRA clearance to be able to receive funding. And it took a year to be able to get that seal on the paper. And probably other donors will say, okay, you have 90 days to process your clearance, and if you don't, we take the money out. Fortunately, with the support from SIDA and IDRC, the SIDA Alliance has more flexibility to say, no, we wait. And we waited the whole year, and we supported this organization to get through that process. But it's amazing the strength that anti-terrorism laws is having, and freedom of expression laws is impacting in actually getting access to funding. So I guess that's also other issue to add to the pot for the steering.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. Oh, goodness, okay. All right, Ihab, if you don't mind, I did see a hand raised in this section. If anyone, on my right side? Yes, okay, if you can go ahead, and then I'll give you the floor, Ihab. Thank you.
Just to Muhammad Mustafa from Disk Foundation India, adding her. Actually, we are facing the same problem because we have the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. It's very high level. We are a registered NGO in India, and we will not be able to get funds internationally. Crowdfunding will not be, definitely, that's not a source for us. And also, if any international organization want to fund to us, that's not possible. We have to source our funding locally there. So if over a period, like 3 years, 4 years, we show our credibility and our work and transparency to the government, probably after 3-4 years, we might get a foreign contribution access to that. So I would see this as an international issue, and this have to be addressed internationally. So probably end of this session, maybe we can have a small work group formed, and to lobby the government, to lobby the lawmakers, because as she said, terrorism and other kind of issues which is funding internationally, that's where the government is putting their measures, strict measures to stop this. But somehow we have to differentiate it. I mean, I think it needs international intervention in this regards. This is what we are talking about. And also, if you go into the Asia as a whole, we have a lot of sources. I mean, India, there is a compulsory CSR, I think 2 or 2.5% compulsory CSR to be paid. But what happened is big organizations, where I don't want to mention the name, they create their own NGOs to fund their CSR. Okay, so it's like, even though it's a couple of millions of dollars to be funded, but that goes into their own, own charity or on. So that also to be, addressed at a global perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your contribution. Ihab, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to add to 2 points. What Sylvia and I think the guy from Malaysia talked about restrictions. Some of the more repressive governments or regimes have these tight controls on civil society. And a lot of them, and I'm thinking of one particular country I'm very familiar with, the law actually pretty much gives the government pretty much a free hand to do with that civil society whatever they see fit. So if a civil society to be considered as not friendly to the government, they could step in and pretty much shut it down very easily. So what I have seen people do increasingly, and it's actually starting to be accepted by some of the funding agencies, is to set up actual corporations, a business, because you can have far more control over a private enterprise. However, in the bylaws of that business and everything, it's basically a non-for-profit business. And if you have that credibility, then I am increasingly seeing that, because this is one way to keep it a little bit away from the hands of these repressive governments and regimes, because in most countries around the world, there is still quite a bit of protections for private enterprise, or at least much higher level of protection than a civil society. So this is one area increasingly used in number of places in Africa and elsewhere to actually set it up from a legal point of view as a private enterprise. The other point is crowdfunding. Crowdfunding, I think, is greatly undertapped in places like Africa and Latin America and so on. Crowdfunding platforms are global. The fact is, it started in the US or in a more developed market doesn't mean it's only focused on those markets. And I think a lot of young entrepreneurs in other parts of the world simply have just not tried it, but it works. Kickstarter, there are hundreds and hundreds of successful stories of people raising, and not, very large amounts in the US or Europe context, but it's a huge amount in an Africa context. When you're looking to raise $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, that might take you a couple of days in Kickstarter to raise it. And you'll be surprised if you have a compelling story and you present your story well with all the supporting arguments and presentation, you will get your at least seed money that will then put you in a stage where you're able to go after the CEDAs and the other organizations of the world for round 2 or 3. But I think crowdfunding, it's something that people should take a very good look at. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ihab. if you don't mind, I would like to give the floor maybe to, I would like to hear from our counterparts in Africa. In Africa, and also our counterparts from Latin America, we would like to hear your experiences and maybe your challenges to maybe get this conversation going a little bit more before we run out of time. Yeah, I have two gentlemen that raised their hands. Sir?
My name is Suleiman Abrahima, and I work with the Media Foundation for West Africa. We are based in Ghana. I think in terms of experience, I would share the challenges that we have. I think access to funding is a difficulty for almost every civil society organization, but I think sometimes it is quite peculiar to African organizations, particularly when it comes to work around ICT for development, internet freedom. And our organization, for example, works on freedom of expression. This is an organization that has, for the past 10 to 15 years, been a traditional free expression organization. And of course, recognizing the important role of the internet, a lot of organizations like us are now going into the free expression, online advocacy, and so on and so forth. But what I think is happening is that in terms of access to funding, I would say quite substantial amounts are still going to organizations based in the West. And of course, what then happens is that you have partnerships coming down. The challenge with that is the issue of the battle in Africa about whether human rights is universal or cultural context should define what human rights should be. And so sometimes when you have Western organizations leading the campaign for internet freedom, internet rights in Africa, the debate then is, well, this is again a neo-colonialist perspective or a Western agenda coming in, and that then becomes difficult for those of us on the ground to actually pursue the results that we want. The other thing is about short-term funding. Usually when you even get the fund, it's 1 year, and it's for this project. Now, the battle in Africa now is around policy, regulation, access, and the issue of human rights. And these are long-term things to pursue. So if you have 1 year to influence policy and legislation in Liberia on internet freedom, really you can't go anywhere. And I think that these are the issues that I would want to put on the floor for consideration. Possibilities of long-term funding, really empowering grassroots organizations in Africa to lead the campaign rather than becoming subsidiaries and partners to Western organizations to lead campaigns in Africa.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brima. That is a very compelling contribution you just made. Anyone, gentlemen? This gentleman here.
Thank you very much. Mohammed Al-Bashir from Sudan, but currently working abroad. Okay, I think firstly, the barriers of entry to entrepreneurs has really almost vanished. So a young entrepreneur or innovator in Africa and Kenya, or the barriers, there's no almost barriers now in terms of to reach out to the global, let's say, marketplace. Kenya is a good example to foster that. There's good innovation happening in the mobile world, in the mobile application business coming from Kenya. So we need to look at it as a collaboration two-way. There's a part that needs to be done locally, and there's institutions in Africa need to step in and try to do that. African Union, Commission, and other, but it have a political challenge as well. Some of the governments are not easy to work with. It will take time, but we need also to start that work. People like funders from let's say the Northern Hemisphere need also to stress the importance of ensuring that from their sides also there's relaxed procedures that enable grassroots to benefit from their projects. If that didn't happen, unfortunately, those young entrepreneurs will be really facing challenges both internally and externally. It's a difficult position, really.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. We will give the floor for just 2 more comments. We have less than 10 minutes left. So I will give the floor to the gentleman on the right, and then I'll give the last comment to this gentleman in front of me that is raising his hand from Bangladesh, I believe. Yes, you will have the last question. Thank you.
Je souhaiterais que vous traduisiez en français.
Hi, okay. I will do my best. It's asking me to translate in English.
Ok. Au niveau de ce qu'on appelle, pour nous, comment nous concevons une innovation à succès,
the way we conceive successful innovation
c'est une nouvelle manière de faire quelque chose,
is a new way of doing something,
de la manière la plus simple possible,
and do it in the most simplest way,
accessible à la grande majorité de la population,
and also accessible to the majority of the population,
et qui réduit de manière considérable les coûts avant.
and that also reduces the cost considerably.
Les problèmes que nous avons au niveau de l'accès au financement dans mon pays, particulièrement en Côte d'Ivoire,
The problems that we face, the challenges that we face when it comes to funding, particularly in Ivory Coast, my country,
il n'y a pas de structure disponible pour financer les jeunes entrepreneurs.
There are no structures that are available to finance young entrepreneurs.
Et l'État a essayé de mettre en place ce qu'on appelait le Fonds national de la jeunesse.
And the government tried to put together a national fund for youth.
Mais les jeunes ne sont pas préparés à créer et à entreprendre.
But the youth, unfortunately, is not readily armed to be able to create these enterprises.
L'État aurait dû, avant de lancer ce fonds, préparer la jeunesse à l'entrepreneuriat.
The government should have prepared the youth to be able to undertake these enterprises.
Donc, on assiste à un dialogue dessous. L'État demande aux jeunes d'envoyer des projets pendant que les jeunes demandent de l'emploi à l'État.
So it's basically a game of ping pong that's going on. The government is asking the youth to do these enterprises, but the youth is also asking for the capacity to do so.
Donc, la solution que nous avons proposée serait de d'abord préparer la jeunesse à l'entrepreneuriat. En ce moment-là, je rejoins alors votre voisin qui dit que ce n'est pas forcément le problème de fond, c'est le problème de formation.
So one of the solutions that we are giving is to prepare the youth, to give the capacity, reinforce the capacity to the youth. And I join myself to Ehab's comments that it's not about just funding, but it's about having the capacity to be able to manage these funds.
Parce que quand vous n'êtes pas préparé à entreprendre, même quand vous recevez des fonds, la plupart du temps, beaucoup de jeunes échouent.
When you receive these funds and you're not prepared to be able to use them adequately, a lot of times these young people fail.
Donc voilà un peu ce que je souhaiterais partager avec l'assistance.
So this was what I cared to share with the group. Thank you very much.
Merci.
Our colleague from Bangladesh.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me the floor. I think this is the biggest opportunity for the ICT organization in Bangladesh because government is very much supportive to the ICT for development. You will be very glad to know that we are closely working with the government, with the Prime Minister Office. There is a section called Access to Information Program, A2I. So they are the technically supporting all the ministry about the ICT issues. So there is opportunity, I think, for the organizations who are funding organizations and others to work closely with the government. Almost 200 e-services provided by the government to the citizen. There is almost 24,000 websites is developing by the government. And there is many organizations developing content and other accessibility issues with the collaboration with the government. And government welcoming all the partners and development agencies and funders to work together to achieve the digital Bangladesh. This is a goal of government. By the 2021, they would like to achieve Bangladesh as a digital Bangladesh. Everything will be digitalized, and they are reaching to the marginalized and grassroots community through telecenters, community radio, etc., etc. So this is a biggest opportunity for a ICT community to come forward to work in Bangladesh. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are out of time, unfortunately. This has been a very interesting roundtable, a very interesting conversation, and I think we want to encourage that these conversations keep going. The challenges are still going to be present after we leave this room. So what can we do to be able to alleviate these challenges? If we can just keep these conversations going. I want to take the time to thank each of our panelists. Ernesto, thank you very much. Jens, thank you. Our colleague from IDRC, we want to thank you as well. Jennifer from Google, thank you. Adiel from Afrinic, we want to thank you, and Ehab as well. Thank you very much. And I thank each and every one of you. Sylvia, our boss. I give you the floor to conclude. Can I have that in writing? All right, thank you. And Duncan, my colleague from, my counterpart and colleague from APNIC, also thank you for sharing this moderation with me. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of IGF. Oh, one more thing.
I just being reminded that I have to remind you. We have the awards ceremony today at lunch break, so instead of joining the queue to look for your food, please come and join us. It's going to be in the Halish Hall. There are red signs stick in different places, so you can follow the red signs and find the Seed Alliance Awards ceremony. We have the winners from Fire, Frida, and Isif here, and you're welcome to join us to get to meet those wonderful projects doing innovation for internet development. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
C'est pour la récompense. La récompense. C'est à 12 ans. C'est bon? Bon, ça va, je pense. Il y a le sable ici, votre sac.
Ayer estaba bien, pero hoy está horrible. No llega nada. ¿Qué se puede hacer ahora? ¿Qué van a hacer? Sé que se mandó algo de banda ancha. No es lo mío.
Para promover el acceso de banda ancha en el país.
Yo tengo que ver qué puse en la shed, porque no me acuerdo. Pero no se ve nada. ¿Eh? No se ve nada. Anda. desaparecido desde ayer. Necesita estar independiente, no con todos los demás. Bueno, nosotros, digo, decía que hay internet, pero no
Los nuevos dueños del salón. Los inquilinos no ven. Vos te puedes quedar tranquilamente.
No, no.
Capaz que hasta se te enemigo.
Next session is on human rights. Nada de él, nada de la aplicación de la tecnología.
They won't charge you with anything. You'll remand me to the police and let you go. And then the next day they'll remand you again without any charges. They just say, they'll get it in, but sorry, we didn't find you doing anything wrong. so the people that I know there, it's really stressful. And then society there is not that conducive. So they're seen around as their families as crazy people who are like standing for Bangladeshi workers or something like that. So it's like, I know them and I Malaysia, we still have something like ACLU, so we still have lawyers groups. For example, if I get arrested, we have lawyer groups that will like do pro bono for me. But in Singapore, there is no such thing. So you're on your own. But that was a great workshop.
Does anyone have a thumb drive?
Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Sounds good. PowerPoint. Thank you. I need a PowerPoint to do that. PowerPoint, do you have that? Can you do this? No, I have hundreds of them.
I'm just trying to get my presentation organized. I want to sit near you. So we can...
Good morning, everyone. I'm actually not the moderator, I'm one of the speakers, but apparently the moderator's going to be 5 minutes late. So chat amongst yourselves and we'll be starting in about 5 minutes. Thank you. Hello everyone again. We just had a little chat and we're going to start because otherwise we may overrun. And we are then going to switch to the moderator when he arrives. So, but until then, I'll try and moderate this as best I can. So we're going to start with a presentation from Larry Magid, who's from the US. And Larry's going to kick off and also introduce himself, if that's okay. So over to you, Larry. Thank you.
Thank you, Susie. Can the PowerPoint come up, the Connect Safely one? Thank you very much, Susie. By the way, that was Susie Hargraves from the Internet Watch Foundation, since she introduced herself. I'm Larry Magid, and along with my colleague Ann Collier, who's with us, am co-director of connectsafely.org. And before I start my presentation, I'm going to do a little commercial. We are sponsoring 2 workshops ourselves that I think would be of interest to people in this room. Ann is doing one, I believe it's Thursday at 2:30 p.m. at 14:30 p.m. Thursday, on digital citizenship, and she's passed out some cards. And I don't have any cards, but I'm doing one tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., and it's called Child Protections and Child Rights, and to try to understand how you can have protections of children and also protect their rights as well, because sometimes protections actually take away rights, and we're going to explore how we can enhance rights. So I would invite everybody to join both the workshop at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning and also the workshop Thursday afternoon. I'm going to talk about, next slide please. I'm going to talk about for a moment the evolution of online safety since 1994. Next slide please.
You can do it.
Oh, I have it. Oh, okay. What do I do? I don't need.
Just click the top one.
Top one? I don't know how to do this. Maybe this one? Which button?
Which button?
That one is. I apologize here. We're technical problems. If you could just manually do them. There's only 4 slides. There's only 4 slides. There's only a few slides. Just manually do it. Hit the button. Okay, thank you. So in 1994, 20 years ago, I had the privilege to write a booklet called Child Safety on the Information Highway, and it was published by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in the United States, which, as many of you know, is America's center which helps protect children, find children who are missing, help children who are sexually exploited. It also runs the cyber, but we stopped focusing on that. Pornography is something that has been around for a long time, probably since the days of the caveman. And what we found that even though I know it's an issue in many places, in many countries, in the United States at least, we have not been able to show a significant amount of psychological damage that's been done because of online pornography. The internet's been around now for about 20 years. Children have been using it extensively for about 18 or 19 years. So we have children, like my own children, who are in their 20s, who grew up on the internet, had access to it, and it turns out that psychologically they seem to be just as well adjusted as children who grew up before the internet. Now, I'm not suggesting that there aren't moral reasons or cultural reasons to be very concerned about pornography by it, but the vast majority of children are not bullied. So it's not to say we don't fight against bullying. We do. We have many programs against bullying, but we don't think of it as something that happens to every child online. Reputation management, digital citizenship, these are all areas that have been explored in internet safety. And now we're beginning to evolve. The internet safety world is beginning to understand security and privacy are very, very important. So it's impossible to talk about safety without talking about security and privacy. I'm not going to talk about them today, but simply say that they are now part of the evolved discussion of internet safety. And then we move into resilience and self-respect. You can protect children all you want, but at the end of the day, children can protect themselves. And so teaching resilience and self-respect, we have found by looking at the research, goes an enormous way to protecting children. So it's not all about adults, protecting and filtering and monitoring. It's also about children developing their own sense of respect and well-being and empowerment. And I think that Anne will talk about that at her digital citizenship event, and I'm going to talk about it on my rights panel. Understanding that all are not equally vulnerable. One of the mistakes we made in the United States in the 90s is that we had an education system that assumed that every child had an equal vulnerability. And what we discovered is that some children are much more vulnerable than others. For example, children with certain conditions like autism have a much higher vulnerability. Children who have serious psychological problems have a vulnerability. Children who come from homes with parents who are abusing alcohol and drugs. The young people have to be resilient and protect themselves. Next slide, please. And ultimately, we talk about monitoring, and I know there are filters in many schools, and there are countries that filter the entire internet to prevent things that maybe should be changed and not looked at by children. But the best filter is the one that runs up here. You can put a filter in the mobile phone, you can filter the internet, you can filter the entire nation, but this is the filter that matters because it's not just about internet protection, it's about understanding critical thinking, about avoiding unnecessary risk, whether you're in the car, whether you're in the marketplace. When I got into a taxi yesterday and was told it was 25 lira to get from Taksim to my hotel, I did a little critical thinking and I said it only cost 6 lira to get from my hotel to Taksim. Maybe this guy is trying to rip me off. Well, if you can learn internet education, you can also learn to negotiate with taxi drivers. It's the same issue. It's critical thinking. It's knowing how to be self-respecting, respecting other people, and it works across the board. So filters are really the ones that have to run here. Next slide. So fear and exaggeration. A lot of people think there's a term called scared straight, that what we need to do with children is make them afraid, tell them how dangerous something is, and they're going to be afraid, and they're going to therefore be more cautious. It turns out, when you look at the research, and there are actually people who study this, that when you exaggerate fear, when you exaggerate risk, it actually increases danger. It doesn't decrease danger. So when we say that bullying is an epidemic, what we're really saying is bullying is common. What does that mean? It means it's normal. And if it's normal, it must be okay. If everybody's doing it, I'm doing it. So by exaggerating bullying, we're actually increasing the risk of bullying. By exaggerating things, if you lie to people, if you misinterpret facts, people tend to react in a negative way. We had a campaign in the United States called Just Say No, the DARE program, Dare to Keep Off Drugs. They scared children into thinking the first time you smoke a marijuana cigarette, you're going to wind up becoming a heroin addict, practically. It actually was correlated with an increased use of drugs. It actually backfired. And the people who ran the program have completely revised it, and now they're using an educational system that's based on something that children can actually understand and appreciate better. Next slide. Okay, so what we're advocating is a social norms approach where you really help people understand what is normative behavior. And guess what? Normative behavior in this world is kindness. Normative behavior is positive. Very quickly, skip to one slide and then another. Skip real quick. One more, no, the wrong way. Go, one more. Go, skip, yeah. So very quickly, we are launching at Connect Safely a new campaign called One Good Thing. It's at onegoodthing.org. It's an international campaign to try to surface the wonderful things that people are doing online. And so we believe that the best way to protect children is to emulate the positive and to show the great things that children are doing. So we urge everyone here to visit onegoodthing.org and tell us your one good thing. Tell us good things that kids in your country are doing so we can share that with the rest of the world. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to carry on attempting to moderate this. I have to apologise to all our speakers to say that I can't get online. So, pardon? Okay, so so basically, I'd like to ask the speakers to introduce themselves when I turn to you, please, if that's okay. Also ask the speakers to speak for only 10 minutes so that we can have some discussion. But also, I think it's really important that we acknowledge that we're in Turkey. It's our the host country is hosting this session. So I think it's really important that we now hear from the Turkish representative to understand what's happening in Turkey. So if it's okay, so I'll pass over to you now. And please, if you could just introduce yourself as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is Fatih Akpınar. I am head of Consumer Rights Department of NRA, Turkish NRA. And today I would like to make a presentation about child online protection and the Turkish experience and importance of this issue. Today I am talking about the importance of child online protection, potential online threats, aiming children and our actions. Yeah, okay. I believe that sharing experiences regarding child online protection will contribute all of us. Within the scope of international authorities or nation regulatory bodies and non-government organizations should work together in order to ensure that children access online information in a secure way. Empowering children, it is highly important how we can educate our children not to impose harmful effect of internet and protect children from harmful online content and of course prevent child abuse in the online environment. In fact, I do not focus on Turkish legislation, but I would like to say a few things about Turkish legislation. Main Turkish legislation is 5651. It is the law number 5651. It is our main legislation. It is enacted 2009. Based upon this legislation, we enacted our secondary legislation 2011. The name of that legislation is By Law on Principle and Procedures Concerning to Safe Internet Services. In my presentation, I would like to make deep explanation about our secondary legislation and its functions, how we can protect our children with that legislation. As I said before previously, Law No. 5651 is a main legislation. It empowers our authority to aim to protect our children in the online environment. And in that legislation, we also defined some crimes. And if we find out that crimes on the internet, we are blocked to the web. When we look at the crimes in our main legislation law, the crimes mentioned in the law are sexual abuse of the children, obscenity, prostitution, facilitating the use of drugs, providing avenue and possibility of gambling, encouragement and incitement of suicide, and supplying hazardous substances for our health. Our secondary legislation is by law on principles and procedures concerning the safe internet services. Safe internet, it explains safe internet services in our country. In accordance with this secondary legislation, safe internet service is a consumer right, giving every customer to choose and select safer internet services. It is important to highlight that existing internet access service of the subscribers, who do not request these services, will continue to provide it in its present form without any change. It is highly important, so we can say that safer internet services is a freedom of choice. In that, there are two profiles, which are child and family profiles. In that services, if the consumer wants to use safer internet services, the consumer can only inform the operator via web pages, call center, SMS, and subscription agreement. But also our eastern part of Turkey and western part of Turkey. So our colleagues will go to the many schools to make conferences and express what the importance of child online protection. And we also distribute relevant information in the schools. We also prepared TV spots. And then we also broadcast all the TV spots on our main TV channels. I think that it is not enough, but it's a big steps to educate our children. We know that internet is our future. That's why one of the main aims of our organization to widespread internet usage all over the country. It is our priority. But on the other hand, protect children from harmful online content is important. That's why we try to empower our children through education and provide alternative internet services to our users who want to use or who want to prefer to use the safer internet services. Yes. In that respect, I also want to highlight that we will be happy to share our experiences regarding child online protection and willing to benefit from your experiences in order to find out the correct way to protect our children from child online protection.